Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have two awesome new indicators for you. They are both based on the Waddah indicator. So the first one is a simple Waddah multimeter. This is a multi-timeframe indicator in which you can define a comma separated list of all of these timeframes. And this one is a single currency indicator, but you can define your own custom currency and you can place as many as you like on the chart. And you can set the Y coordinates and that way stack them one on top of the other. And this one will also give you alignment alerts in case all the timeframes that you have selected, if those get aligned. This is pretty basic. It shows you the Waddah trend, whether it's going up or whether it's trending down, or if the Waddah is above the explosion line or if it is below that. And this indicator, this is a free one. And the second indicator, that one is a paid indicator and it has a lot more features than this one. This is a multi-currency and a multi-timeframe scanner. Just like the previous one, this one will also show you the Waddah trend and whether it's above or below the explosion line, and if that trend is increasing or decreasing, and explosion line is going up or down. And it also shows you the Waddah percentage compared to the max level. I will go over all of these symbols one by one, but let's first just talk about the Waddah indicator itself so that you understand the different components, and then I will get back to the multimeter first, and finally I'll get to the scanner. So let's get started with the Waddah. Right here, this link explains the Waddah indicator in a lot more detail. But basically Waddah has three important components. The first one is this histogram. This shows the green lines, they show an uptrend, and the red lines, these show a downtrend. And this yellow line, this is an explosion line. And if these histogram bars, if these are above this yellow line, it means that the trend is strong. If they go below the yellow line, it means that the trend is currently weak. And this white line, this is a dead zone line. And the Waddah bars which are below this line, that is a very low signal and it's not safe to trade in this zone. So just go over each of these and you can also check out the settings. These Waddah trend lines, these are calculated using the MACD trend difference between the current bar and its previous bar using a sensitive multiplier. This value, it will adjust the sensitivity of the overall indicator. By default, the value is 150. And the explosion line, that is calculated using the Bollinger Band's upper and lower difference. So this line, it is a great way to show when the market is in high or low volatility mode. And this dead zone, you can define the point value. If you want really high signals, then you can keep the dead zone slightly higher, and that way you will get really high volume signals. And let's just go over the simple Waddah multimeter, these symbols. First, let me explain these to you. So the green, these green color circles, these indicate that the Waddah trend, right here, these lines are above the explosion line. And the darker green, this indicates that the green lines are currently below the explosion line. And same way, the red one, these red circles, these indicate that the downtrend histogram, that is above the explosion line. And darker red, this indicates that it's below the explosion line. And you can easily set these colors in the settings, whether you want strong bullish, strong bearish, weak bullish or weak bearish. And none. None will mean that the Waddah is below the dead zone and so it shows you no signal. And finally, you can set the alerts to on or off. So if any explosion happens, when Waddah line crosses the explosion bar, in that case, if you want individual alerts, set this to true. By default, it will be false. And alert on all time frames aligned. this one will be true by default. Now if your shift is 0, which is current bar, then Waddah might sometimes go above or below the explosion line. So you can set this to true if you do not want multiple alerts for the same bar. Let me just go over the settings for the multimeter. You can set the comma separated time frames list right here, and over here you can define a pair name. It could be any currency symbol, Forex, Bitcoin, stocks, whatever your broker supports. And right here, be sure to use a unique prefix in case if you have multiple indicators on the same chart, then this unique prefix will make sure that those don't overlap. And you can define a small past bars value right here, because we are only interested in the current bar or maybe shift 1, which is why this can be at a lower value. If you have shift 0, then you can also have this refresh after ticks. If it's 0, then it will refresh the current bar only once. Otherwise, you can, suppose if you have set it to 100, then every 100 ticks, it will refresh this multimeter. Next, these are the display settings. We have already talked about the color for different states of this indicator. By default, it will be in the right lower chart corner. And the spacing, this is the spacing between these symbols. If you want even more closer values, you just set it to something lower. This is the symbol. Currently we have this circle, but you can use any code. Next, you can set the font size. If you want it a lot more compact, set this to lower. And finally, we have the Y distance. The Y distance will be the distance from here, lower right corner. And suppose if you have multiple of these, in that case, the next one will be slightly higher, the next one even more higher, and each time they will have a unique prefix. Just make sure to set this value and this value as different, then you'll get this kind of a stacking. Finally, these are the main Waddah settings. This is the sensitivity. If you increase this, then this will be a lot more sensitive to the MACD fluctuations. This is the DeadZone pip. If you want really high values, then set this to something higher. Suppose if I have it at 60, then it will mark a lot of these values which are very small volume. These will come under the DeadZone. Default is 15. We already talked about these alerts. This multimeter, it will only support alerts for when the Waddah goes above this explosion line or when all the timeframes are aligned. It won't show you the values for explosion power or trend power. The scanner, the other one, that supports those values. So I'll go over those in just 1 minute. And these are all the alert types that you can have if you want pop-ups, or if you want to set your own custom sounds, if you want push notifications on your phone, or email alerts. And finally, we have file alerts in case if you want all of these to go into a file, and you can also set a custom file name. All files will be created inside this directory. So just check out this free version in case if you only use the Waddah indicator and if you are only interested in the current state of trend and trend alignment. Next, let's talk about the Waddah scanner. I'll open that and set it to all 28 pairs. You can also define your own custom comma separated list over here in case if you have stocks or indices or maybe bitcoins, etc. So you can define your cryptocurrency here. Next, this is the time frames list, and you can use your own custom template whenever a button on the scanner is clicked. If this is true, then it will use this template to open that in a new window. I have one template, 1.tpl. I already have this chart as 1.tpl. I have saved it, so I'll be using that. And these are just in case if you have open orders, then it will highlight those open order pairs. You can hide the title in case if you want a more compact design, but leave it to false if you want to use the minimize feature. and you can increase or decrease the button and row height. Use negative values here to decrease it and positive values to increase it. So I'll just press OK and we can see the scanner. I'll talk about the way the alignment works with this one. It's a bit complex, so I'll talk about it soon. But let me first go over all of these symbols. Just go to the scanner appearance, and if you want all of these to be on the same line, suppose if you have all 28 pairs, then this will be a lot better. But if you have fewer pairs and if you want to read them on different lines, like these 2 rows, then just set this to false and it will become more compact on the right side and it will show you all information in these 2 rows. I'll go back to the default because I have 28 pairs, so that one is better for me. And like we talked about in the previous one, you can set the colors over here. It's the exact same thing: strong bullish, strong bearish, above the trigger line. And the trigger line is this yellow explosion line. So if I say explosion line or trigger line, it's the same thing. And these weak bullish or weak bearish signals, you can set the color right here. If it is slightly darker green or darker red, these are weak signals. And these lime and red colors, these are stronger signals. And if you get these gray color signals, then that means that Waddah is below the dead zone. And info color, this one is for the explosion line, and these 2 are for the background, the bullish background and bearish background. So these will be highlighted in case Waddah is above the explosion line and Waddah trend has started within this predefined trend bars. Suppose if I set this to something higher, like 20 trend bars, then it will highlight a lot more boxes because it will look for the past 20 bars, and if the Waddah signal has started within the past 20 bars, then it will highlight it. It takes about 3 to 4 seconds to load if you're using all 28 pairs and 3 time frames. If you have fewer pairs and fewer time frames, then it will load a lot faster. Also, you can set this max past bars to something lower, and that will also make it refresh a lot faster because we are not interested in all the past bars. And this is the spacing between these symbols, and these are the Waddah settings, the settings for the actual indicator. I'll go over the trend alignment very soon, but I'll go over these symbols first. I'll link this in the description box so you can go through all of this. As I keep adding new features, sometimes the videos might get outdated, but I always update this product page. So whenever you need to find any information, please go through this product page. It will be the most updated thing. We already talked about the colors, gray and red and green. Now these circles, these will indicate the trend, and these brackets, the value inside the bracket, that will show when the Waddah trend had started. Right here 4 means that it had started 4 bars back. So it will look through these values and it will see, like right here, if I take the crosshairs tool, then the trend had started 9 bars back. And right here, if you see something like 11 or 15, then that shows you how long that trend has been running for. So this is important in case if you are scalping, or in case if you need immediate trends. You can also set the trend bar number to very low. Like right here, if you have only 1, then it will check if this trend has occurred only 1 bar back, and it will only highlight those signals where trend has just started. And all the alerts for individual time frames, those will only happen if trend had started those trend bars, number of bars back. Going back, the next value that we have, this X, this means the Waddah trend is this times the explosion line. Let me also show you the data window. That X, it will show you how many times the Waddah is greater than this explosion. That is important because if the Waddah signal is at least 2 times or 3 times more than this explosion line, then that will show you just how strong the Waddah actually is. Right here, as you can see, the Waddah trend has started just 1 bar back, and already the Waddah is 2 times the explosion line. And going back, right here x5, it means that the Waddah is 5 times the explosion line. This is a very important value, this percentage. It means that the Waddah trend is these many percent compared to the maximum trend in max past bars. So suppose if we have this max past bars 1000, then it will look for the past 1000 bars and it will find the maximum Waddah trend we had so far, and this power value 26% means that the maximum value was 100%, then this is only 26% compared to that. So this shows you just how weak the signal currently is. I'll go back. As you can see, the Waddah indicator, it does not have an actual upper value. Right here we have 0 as the lower scale where these happen, but the upper value, it can change a lot. Suppose if we just look at this, then the Waddah trend, it might seem like it's pretty strong, but if we scroll through, and I'll increase the number of past bars, suppose let's look at 5000 bars, and as I keep scrolling, this number right here, it increases, meaning that this is a lot more stronger than what we saw. Like 0. This might appear just as strong as that, but this will be half of that value, which is why if we just visually look at the Waddah symbols, then that won't necessarily show us the trend power, but these percent values, these will show us just how strong the Waddah breakout really is. So right here, as you can see, 8 bars back, the trend has started, and the trend is right now at 46% of the max Waddah so far. And something like this, it might show you that the Waddah has just broken out over the explosion line 1 bar back, but currently the power is only at 15%. And the next two symbols, the plus and minus, the first one, it shows you if the Waddah trend is increasing in the current shift bar as compared to the previous bar. And this second plus or minus, this shows if the explosion is currently increasing or decreasing compared to the previous bar. So this is useful because sometimes if Waddah has just broken over the explosion line, and if the explosion line is going up, then that means that the trend is picking up that much more volume. And if the explosion line starts going down, then that means that trend is losing its power. This is even better. Right here the explosion line goes up, it holds steady, and then it starts to come down. Which is why before trading, just take a look at these. Both plus, it is a very good sign. It means that the trend is picking up. Next up, let us talk about the highlights and the alerts. So it will highlight each of these boxes when Waddah is above the explosion line, whether it's green or red, and if trend had started, those trend bars back, and all the values are above thresholds. So you can define the thresholds right here. I already showed you that this value x times, that is the trend height, which is number of times above the explosion line, and you can also set the threshold. Suppose if I set 2 over here, then it will only highlight those boxes if Waddah trend is more than 2 times the explosion line. This is the trend percent and this is the threshold for that. If I want really strong signals, then I can set this to something like 50. Then it will only highlight signals when they are more than 50%, the maximum Waddah trend so far. And these, you can define the explosion points. By default, the dead pip zone, it's already at 15. So you can either leave this as blank to disable these values, or you can set these to higher. If it is 30, then it will check if the explosion line is more than 30 points, and it will only highlight these pairs and give the alerts if it's above these threshold values. This one is for trend points, so this will check these Waddah values. These should be more than whatever points you have here. And if you don't want to use these thresholds, just leave this to blank, set the trend % back to 0, and this can also be 0. So these will disable all of these threshold checks. And we have already talked about the alerts. So for individual time frames, these alerts and these highlights, they will only happen when all conditions are met, meaning only for strong Waddah signals, when Waddah is above this explosion line and above all of these threshold values, and trend had occurred within these number of bars back. So right here, as you see, only this is highlighted, or only these are highlighted. If you also want highlights for trend when it had started several bars back, then set this to something like 10 or 20. And you can set this alert on explosion and threshold for individual time frames. You can set this to true, and then you'll start getting alerts for all of these. All of these which are highlighted, because I set it to 20, we are getting a lot more alerts here. I'll reset that back to 1, and I'll set this to false. And next up, let us talk about the alignment checks. I think the alignment feature will be the most useful for this dashboard, because sometimes, suppose I'm trading using multiple time frames, and if my strategy has that all the time frames should be aligned where Waddah is above the explosion line, that will give me a very strong signal. But sometimes, like the lowest time frame M30, I want this one to be above the threshold, and I want the trend to have just started 1 or 2 bars back. But for H1, I do not want to check the trend bars. I only want to check if Waddah is above the explosion line. And for H4, I only want to check the Waddah color. I don't necessarily want it to be above the explosion line. So we can have trend alignment checks for that. Or another example, suppose if you are scalping on M30, and on M30 you want the trend to be green, but on H1 you want there to be a slight pullback, meaning you want the Waddah trend to be red, because price has started to go down a little and price should continue back up. So this trend alignment, these numbers, they will allow you to set it exactly the way you like it. So I'll go over those numbers now, and it will give you a better idea. So just go through this page, trend direction values. For a particular time frame, if you want there to be no alignment checks, then just set that to 0. Going back to this example, for M30, if I want that to be with the Waddah trend, but for H1, I don't want any checks, then the central one, this, I can set that to 0. These values will correspond to your time frames, which you specify right here in the time frames. So these comma separated values, these will correspond with these trend alignment values. Setting 0, it will mean that for H1 there will be no alignment check. And the very first time frame, this lowest time frame, it needs to be more than 0, because all the other time frames, they will be checked against this very first time frame. So this value needs to be 1 or greater. It can't be 0. You can also have the opposite alignment check, like discussed earlier. In case you are looking for a pullback, just the number 1, it will only look for Waddah trend direction. It will not check explosion values. It will only look for the red or green color, and explosion could be either of those. Waddah could be above the explosion or below. But if you have this value 2 set, then it will check for Waddah and no explosion. If you specify -2, then if the first time frame was green, it will look for red bars, but those red bars should be below the explosion line. Next up, we have Waddah and explosion, value 3. So value 3, it will check for the Waddah color, and the Waddah should be above the explosion lines. So you can just check these. And finally, check number 4. For that, it will check Waddah and trend bar. It won't check explosion. Waddah trend color will be checked, and trend should have started those trend bars, number of bars back. These trend bars. So suppose if I have something like 10, then it will check for the color, and that trend should have started within 10 bars. And for value 5, the Waddah and trend bar and no explosion, it will check the Waddah color. Waddah should have occurred within trend bars, and Waddah should be below the explosion line. And finally, value 6, the same thing, Waddah and trend bar and value should be above the explosion line. And this will be the strongest possible signal. So for example, let's say we have something like 6 minus 4, 3. For time frames M30, H1 and H4. So for the first time frame, it will check condition 6, meaning Waddah should be above this explosion line. It will find the color of the Waddah. Suppose we have green. And finally the check number 3. So you can just refer to this guide and look for 3. So for H4 time frame, it will only check the Waddah and explosion. It will not check the trend bars. So for the first time frame, it will check all the conditions. Second time frame, it will check that the Waddah is in opposite direction. And for the final condition 3, it will check if Waddah is in the same direction, but it won't check these trend bars. And I would suggest that you check these out, and if you have set this to true, alert on aligned, then it will go through all of these conditions and it will show you an alert only if everything aligns. So let me set this to a very basic check where 3 and 3 and 3. So for 3 check, it will only check the Waddah and explosion. So let's look for the time frames where Waddah is most definitely above the explosion line. So right here you get all of these alerts, and let me set everything else to false. Let me set the individual time frames to false. That way we only get alert on aligned. All of these pairs, they have the Waddah aligned. And now suppose if we want even fewer signals where Waddah had occurred within those trend bar number of bars back. So if we want trend bars, then we need to check Waddah and trend bar, which is 4. So if we change that to 4, and if we set these trend bars to something less, like 5, so now it will limit the signals by a lot. Only for these two pairs, all the conditions match. So I would suggest that you play around with these settings, and based on what your strategy is, just set the alignment. And please note that this Waddah indicator, this is only a utility. Please don't use this for direct signals because you always need other indicators to find the entry and exit points. This Waddah scanner is great to validate your current signals. And in this page, I have explained a few strategies that you can use for scalping, a few other indicators that you can use. For example, if you want to use pivot points, then you can just check for a strong volume bar crossing a pivot point and all the Waddah signals matching that particular breakout. In that case, if this Waddah signal is also aligned with the higher time frames where the Waddah signal is just as strong, then this will be a strong downtrend. And another strategy that you can combine, you can find something for trend confirmation. For example, half trend or anything which shows you which direction the price is moving. And based on that, you can wait for Waddah to break out of the dead zone area, or if you are scalping, then you can wait for Waddah to do a quick reversal. A quick reversal will be where Waddah stays above the explosion line and it quickly reverses the direction of the trend. Those kinds of signals are also very strong. Like right here, as you can see, the volume is pretty high and the signal reverses, meaning it will be a very strong high volume bar for it to reverse that quickly. If you want to debug this scanner and find out why a particular signal is being ignored, for example, if you have set some threshold values and you don't know why it's skipping certain signals, then just set this detailed debug in logs to true and then open the journals logs. So right here, that will show you exactly why a particular signal is being skipped. For example, Waddah trend is this and you have set the threshold value to 30 points. And that's why it had skipped this particular time frame. And it will also show you why alignment is skipped. We had value 4 for H1 and alignment was skipped because Waddah was not along the same direction as the first time frame. And this one alignment was skipped because it was not within trend bars on the first time frame. These alignment checks, they will help you find good trading setups before they happen. And after that, you can use some more validating indicators to find the best entry points. And you can also use the max spread if you want to trade pairs where spread is a certain amount. Like if you want where spread is something like 15 or 20 or lower, then you can set the max spread threshold and it will remove all the pairs where spread is higher than that. Because at any given time of day, sometimes certain pairs are performing a lot better based on which market is open. The demo version will allow you any 3 pairs, so just check that out and let me know in the comment section below what you think. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Have an awesome day.